Welcome to Visual Design with Maria. Today we're going to be talking about principles and context. Let's take a look at the big idea. Today I would like for you to understand the 7 principles of design and how they work within a composition. First, we're going to take a look at balance. You can see here that I have a line separating the composition from left to right. There's 2 figures in the foreground, a female figure and a male figure. The composition is considered balanced because of this imaginary line going down the center. We have equal sides, the female and the male balance one another out in the foreground. Also, you have a sense of balance in the background. You have a red barn over here to the right, and you have an extension of the house that could be a front entryway or a front porch that helps balance out the barn that's on the right-hand side. Not only do you have balance on both sides of the picture plane in the background, left and right, but you also have balance here in the center of where the heads are of the figures. Here's the foreground, and then in the background you have this nice triangular shape. It's a strong shape that helps create a sense of balance within the work. Next, we're going to talk about scale. And you can see that this painting by David Hockney, A Bigger Splash, represents scale in several ways. We have the picture plane is divided into 3 parts, a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. Let's take a look at the first arrow. You see here that it's pointing to the diving board, which is painted large because it's in the front or in the foreground. Anything that's going to be closer to you as the viewer is always going to appear larger within the composition. We then move to the middle ground here, where we've been provided a smaller scale of what looks to be like a lifeguard chair, and it's painted smaller because it's supposed to be represented farther away from us. So things that appear in the middle ground or the background are going to be smaller than what would be appearing in the foreground. So he's created a sense of perspective by using scaling things down from large to small to smaller. Next, we're going to take a look at contrast. And contrast we have represented by Henri Matisse in Red Turba of contrasting colors that are different from one another or very different from one another. You have here this kind of reddish orange turban on the lady's head, and you have a background of this kind of gray blue. Orange and blue are contrasting colors, so therefore you have a strong difference in the color representation. Again here, if you look at the pattern on the lady's dress, you can see that it's a orangish kind of red tone, and her dress, the background color of her dress, is kind of a green-gray. And we know that red and green are contrasting colors, so they're different from one another. That helps create a unified contrasting composition. Next, we're going to talk about proximity. And Paul Gauguin's self-portrait, you can see that he's placed himself, or the figure, in the foreground, creating a closer proximity to the viewer. It's almost like we are standing face to face with him, the way that he's painted, almost like we're having a conversation with him. In the background, you can see that these are 2 of his works of art that he's using for the background, but could also be mistaken for maybe a landscape, or this figure behind him could be represented as that though he's standing in front of an actual landscape. So the way that he's positioned himself and placed himself is a little bit subjective. You can view it in a couple different ways, but just know that proximity is the way that the artist places the elements within a composition. Next, we're going to take a look at rhythm. And rhythm is represented by Keith Haring's Red Hot Dance. And you can see that we have a couple different things going on as far as visual rhythm. The arms of the figures, we go up, our eye leads up, and then we come down and back up and kind of evens out. Not only do we have a visual rhythm happening within the arm motions of the dancers, but also within the feet of the dancers. You can see here that one leg is off the ground, both legs are off the ground here, and then we're back on the ground, and we have balance here because this figure's legs are kind of repeated in the same position. So our eye follows the feet or follows the legs, creating a visual rhythm. Not only do the figures create a visual rhythm, but also these kind of action line marks. Our eye starts here and then follows down. So it really does look like these figures are in motion. We're going to talk about emphasis, and Diego Rivera's Man at the Crossroads is a great example of emphasis. And we have a focal point right here in the center of the sphere, and the hand is kind of holding the sphere. And the reason why that this is considered the focal point is because of this shape in the background. This X, if you follow my mouse, I'm going to go from the left hand of the picture plane to the right hand side, and then from the right hand side to the left hand side. And if you can see, it's almost like X marks the spot because our eyes are gravitating towards this focal point where the emphasis is being created. And last, we have unity. We're going to view Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night and talk about how this is a unified composition in a couple ways. One way that this is unified is the swirl motion that you can see that he's been using within the sky, and how he kind of repeats the swirl motion throughout the composition. Not only is that swirl motion helping create a unified composition, but we also have the brush strokes. In Vincent van Gogh's painting, you can actually see a lot of the individual brush strokes that make up the work. You can see it here in the sky. You can definitely see it here around the moon and the stars. And you can also see it here within the landscape down below. Again, here in the cypress tree too. So all of these things are helping to create a unified composition. So let's review. The principles of design are balance, scale, contrast, proximity, rhythm, emphasis, and unity.